War. Huh. What is it good for? As the song goes, absolutely nothing. Hi, I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. And before we get started, I want to thank my 19 subscribers. Last podcast, I said we had 20. We lost one. RIP to that subscriber. If you like what I say, like and subscribe. If you don't like what I say, don't like and subscribe. Now, if you're wondering why I look like this and why I'm doing an episode on a Saturday, it is because yesterday I was out sick. My producer, who is also me, gave me the day off. It was nice. So I'm shaking my own hand. Thank you, me. So I'm bringing some new content on a Saturday, delivering extra content. Extra content that is actually not extra content. It's really just the content you signed up for when you subscribed. We made a deal. I'm living up to the terms of the deal. So you'll have five episodes this week. Anyway, what is war good for? As the song goes, absolutely nothing. Why is that? Well, I was reading a book this morning called Lucky 666 on the recommendation of my dad, which is about a bomber crew group in World War II. Now, the story is one of absolute heroism in war. But the author made an interesting point about, number one, the horrors of war, and number two, the differences in how the war was fought in the European and the Pacific theater. In the European theater, the Axis powers that fought there, namely the Germans and the Italians, basically, were seen as human. But if we shifted to the Pacific theater, for many, many reasons, the Japanese were not seen as human. Now, in fairness, the Japanese also did not see the Americans as human either, or the Allied powers as human either. But regardless, the Allied powers, who allegedly held the moral high ground, saw their counterparts there as subhuman. Back home, as we all know, the U.S. government made a policy of internment of sending the Japanese Americans to internment camps on the belief that there were spies hidden among us. Now, we know at this point that that turned out to not be correct. And it turned out to just sort of be a racist policy of kicking Japanese Americans out of their homes. So there was nothing good that came out of war. Now, there's going to be someone who says, well, Nick, that's pretty obvious. War is never good. And you would be right. War is never good. The end result of war is a net negative. Now, someone might say, well, World War II, it shut down the Third Reich, which was committing horrible atrocities on the world. Yes, that is true. So that's a positive. Let's say that we negate almost all of let's get rid of all of the negative results of World War II for a second and just say that it was worth it if we took down the Third Reich. You still killed a lot of people, spent a lot of money. That's all negative. Now, you may say it doesn't matter because you had that positive, and I would agree. Shutting down the Third Reich was very important. And stopping the Japanese, what they were doing in Asia, also important. But war is the only time when you can have a positive result be a negative. War is never optimal. It's never ideal. Political science theory would tell us that war is a failure of negotiation. War is the end result of failed negotiations. Political science theory would also tell us that, America is the worst country to have ever existed, somewhat unironically. You'd think I would have had enough coffee today based on the speed of this podcast, but it's never enough coffee. Anyways, the problem in a situation like World War II is that we didn't just shut down empires. We developed the atomic bomb, which led to the nuclear arms race that came to be known as the Cold War, and the nuclear arms race that really continues today. We discovered the horrors of the Holocaust and somehow didn't provide enough evidence to make sure that we never forgot the fact that the Holocaust existed to the extent that there are still deniers today. Many people would, perhaps justifiably so, say we didn't get involved quick enough to stop the horrors of the Holocaust, or we didn't believe it. We used a nuclear weapon on Japan and laid waste to their cities. History buffs also know that we did far, far worse than drop a nuclear bomb. Nick, what's far worse than a nuclear bomb? We firebombed them. Now, why is a firebomb worse? Well, by the time we dropped the nuclear bomb, we had already done a lot of damage to the Japanese homeland. It hadn't stopped the war. The Japanese had not quit yet. And the dropping of the nuclear bomb was so spectacular that it led to the surrender. But all that said, the firebombing we did caused much, much, much more damage than the nuclear bomb. The nuclear bomb was just more spectacular. The firebombing was more, from a war point, it was more effective because the Japanese construction at that time was essentially wood and paper. You light a match on that stuff, sets off a chain reaction. I believe, and I'm only in a 10-minute show, don't have time to do research, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. I believe we did a firebombing campaign on Kyoto and essentially wiped it off the map. Obviously, it's been rebuilt since then. We have an unintentional guest in the podcast. My father walked through. Obviously, I'm in his house, and I don't want to not acknowledge the fact that I've looked off to the camera a few times. We essentially that would be the call for me to pay rent. It's not called rent when you are only staying for a few days. I don't know what you technically legally call it. It would be a hotel bill. Yes. I don't have turn down service, and I bought the coffee this morning for those of you who were wondering, but we endeavor to persevere. Back to our topic of war. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Essentially, the U.S. wiped Kyoto off the map, which didn't stop the war, which is why we dropped the nuclear bomb, but it was devastating. The island hopping campaign was also devastating. Again, because we had to go island by island and essentially eliminate all life from the island. And that was done by hand. As any Marine who has been through Guadalcanal will probably tell you, it was not pleasant. And it does things to you. We don't have a good, rigorous study, I don't think, of the PTSD that came out of World War II. We know the effects of it, but we don't have a rigorous study of what came out of that. And the reason I'm focusing on World War II is, again, because I just was reading about it this morning. But for all the positive that came out of World War II and stopping some of the horrors that were ongoing, it still wasn't good. It was a not good positive. Some people would say, well, isn't that a negative? Well, again, war is nuanced, but what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. And, we're all more familiar with the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and what has resulted from that. Big data, collection of data, the security state, the TSA, if we're going to just go kind of low scale, bad stuff that has come out of the war. Look, this podcast should not be taken as saying that the troops are bad. They are not. And every country should have its own military because the military is key to being able to leverage negotiations. And the bigger guns you have, the more effective your negotiations are. The problem is, if you have big guns, you have to be willing to use the big guns. And when you get to the point of using the big guns, you have failed in negotiating. And the problem with a failed negotiation is, to get it back on track, you have to fight. And at the point at which you lose one human life, you've already hit a negative. And at that point, you're just trying to salvage a bad situation. Again, you need the military, but war, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. It's my opinion. What is the military good for? Honestly, the military is good for the fact that it exists to protect in the situations where there is another aggressor. You want a strong military. Our troops are, they get up every day and know that they potentially could put their lives on the line, often do put their lives on the line. But in general, war, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. My opinion, what do I know? I just have a master's in political science that I haven't used in 10 years. If you like what I said, like and subscribe. If you didn't like what I said, leave an angry comment. Maybe I'll answer it. I don't know. I'm still not feeling great, so if I answer it, the answer will be snarky. And you won't be happy with the end result of it. We'll get in an internet fight, an internet war. And what is that good for? Absolutely nothing. I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. Have a great day.